What's going on, guys? Pat here. Last video we started the reassembly of the frame, putting in all the major components. In this video it's going to be part 2 of that, where we start doing some of the smaller stuff, running all the fuel lines, doing the steering linkage, things like that. So stay tuned. Beautiful day here in Connecticut, so I figure it's a nice day to come outside and make a little progress on the car. In the last video I had gone over the pilot bearing not really fitting the input shaft, so I ordered a new one from Jegs. I believe it's a center force unit. I'm waiting on that to come in. I got most of the old bearing pressed out. I used the trick of putting bread behind it, but unfortunately it wasn't a fully sealed bearing, so only the inners pressed out. I can get a bearing puller, so hopefully I can get that locally. If not, I'll look into ordering one to try and pull out that outer race out of the crank. If not, unfortunately, probably gonna have to cut it and just be careful not to nick the crank. But not really doing much with that today because I don't have the parts to really do anything with it. So I figure I'd focus on what I can do. And in that case, it's gonna be putting the steering linkage back in. The box itself is a PSC 12-to-1. It's from their Pro Touring series of boxes. PSC standing for Performance Steering Components. Aside from that, it's pretty much all factory linkage. I have the UMI ends on this. It's part of their bump stop kit that's included with the Corner Max kit. I'll go in depth on the suspension and brakes soon. Probably make a few suspension changes before the season starts, but if anything, I'll do a quick rundown, just kind of going over what I'm running right now, what I've been running for the last few years, and what I'm going to change before the season starts and why. So let's get started. All right, so a little midday update here. Got all the steering in, like I was talking about doing this morning. Steering box is all bolted in, have the lines back in, have the linkage hooked up. Wasn't too bad. All I did was disconnect the steering knuckle from the spindle, so all I had to do was throw that back on there. The alignment should be where it was when we took the car apart, which was -1 degree of camber and then 0 toe, so it wasn't in or out. We're probably going to realign it before we go shake it down and start testing with the car. Probably go a little more aggressive, probably around -2 degrees of camber to start, and then probably 1/8 inch toe out, and then go from there. There's not really a set alignment for any given conditions that is going to guarantee you to be fastest. It's always changing, and it's part of it's what the driver prefers. So we'll go take the car, see where it's at, and kind of adjust it from there. But for now, we're just gonna leave it be. Once the car is pretty much ready to go and we change out the coil springs and everything's set right where it wants to be, then we'll go in and set the alignment. So nothing else really going on for now. I'm still waiting on the lines to come in. I have to actually order them and then wait for them to come in. We're gonna be doing the nickel copper for the brake lines, 316 line all the way back to the rear brakes and also in the front. Then for fuel line, it's gonna be 3/8 inch line. Not sure what material we're going with yet, in between stainless steel and the nickel copper or the NiCop, which is what we're using for the brake lines, like I was saying. Stainless is harder to work with, but it's also the strongest. Nickel copper is the easiest to work with and also has good corrosion resistance, but we run compression fittings to adapt from the line to AN fittings, and people have had issues with the nickel copper where instead of the ferrule crushing down within the compression adapter, the actual line crushes down. So we don't want to have to deal with leaks and worry about that stuff. So we're gonna see, we might test fit some compression fittings on some of that line and see where we're at before we commit to anything. But yeah, we'll see what material we want to go with. Right now we have stainless for the feed line on the car, and then aluminum for the return. Aluminum's not bad, but in high vibration situations, it can fatigue over time and rupture, which isn't something we really want to have to deal with or worry about. So we're probably just going to commit to one of the lines that doesn't have that issue. As far as what's next, I need to throw the shocks in the back of the car. Need to obviously do the lines once those come in. Still waiting on the pilot bearing, so there's nothing really I can do there. And yeah, that's all that's going on for now. To be honest, we're probably going to shift our focus a little more towards doing the sheet metal work tomorrow. Now once some of these parts start coming in, be able to get back on the frame. So but don't be surprised if there's a little bit of sheet metal work in this video, even though it's mostly focused on rebuilding the frame. So we'll pick it up once I get some more work done. Finally making some good headway here. After fighting with pilot bearings for the last couple weeks, we finally have it installed and ready to get the transmission in. The first pilot bearing we installed that came with the kit was a Timken one. The ID was too big, so it squeezed up a bunch when we installed it. And then the input shaft for the transmission wouldn't even fit. So we took that out, changed over to a center force pilot bearing, which I think was 3,000 smaller on the ID. The Timken was 1.378, and then the center force was 1.375. I put that one in, and literally on the last hit to get it flush with the crank, the outer race cracked in half, which I think you can see the little remnants of it down here. You can see where it cracked and split. So that sucked. But at least we knew that one would work. So I ordered another one, and my dad suggested that we leave it in the freezer overnight just so it would shrink a little bit more. And so we did that and actually ended up working. So pilot bearings in, installed. You see the bell housing is back on, with clutch, pressure plate, all that stuff. So it's ready to go in. Just waiting for my dad to get home because it's a lot easier to try and install a transmission like this with 2 people versus just trying to wrestle with it myself. As far as our transmission itself, nothing's really changed. We put the heat shields on here. These are from DEI for the bleed line, and then also the feed line for the hydraulic throwout bearing, just to help prevent any fluid boiling or overheating or anything like that. It's pretty cheap. It's like, I don't know, 15 bucks. So it's just cheap insurance to help ensure that it's going to be reliable over the course of a 20-minute session, and not just overheat after a few laps and you start losing the clutch and having issues. Did a little bit of work on the back wheel well here. I said we'd already cut and moved it and tack welded it, but we still had that big gap that I had to fill in. So I just matched the 16 gauge steel that was there. I just got a sheet from Lowe's and cut out what I needed, and then MIG welded it in, ground my welds down, and kind of repeated that process a few times to get everything filled in. It's pretty good. It's not perfect. You'll still see there's a little bit of a transition from where the piece we put in is back to the factory wheel well, but I'm not going to get that perfectly flush. Well, I'm happy with it. I just need to grind down the welds on the back side, and then that should be all set, and then I have to go do the other thing on the same thing on the other side. Still have to weld in that new cross brace here. We have to get some cage nuts. These are the ones that the extra 2 mounts on BOP cars went up against this, but we're going to add the nuts in so they're actually functional. We had to actually narrow this one by a couple inches to account for the wider wheel wells that we put in there. Nothing really changed in the interior. One change of plans is we're going to be installing the pedals and doing all the fabrication on the firewall before the body goes back on the frame. Originally planned on doing that after, but actually thinking since we're going to be installing the frame with the drivetrain in, there's not really a great way to paint the firewall with the engine in the car, because we're going to be welding in this area and changing this here. You can see where the factory master cylinder originally went, which we're not going to be using, and then also with the new painless kit, we're just going to be drilling a hole here and using a grommet to run the wiring through, so we're not going to use this bulkhead connector anymore. We're going to be reusing the factory steering column for now, so that's not going to change. I'm going to be switching over to 2 U-joints and a new solid steering shaft as an intermediate shaft off the column, and see if that'll help eliminate any play in the steering, because that was the main reason I was looking at changing columns, was just trying to improve steering feel. So I'm going to change that first, because it'll only be like 100, 150 bucks to do, and then if that doesn't work, I'll look into swapping out to a race style column like that sweet manufacturing one I was looking at. So doesn't really impact plans too much, just kind of changing the order with what we're doing here. I still have to paint the entire bottom side of the car, and then you can still see the hole in the floor for the new tunnel that we're gonna have to put in. So still have to, hopefully this week I'll reach out and try and get one made. I have one designed in CAD. I just got to send the blueprints out to a local fab shop and see if they can make it. As far as the frame, we got the stuff for the lines in. We end up going with stainless steel 3/8 for the feed and return lines for the fuel line, and then we're doing 3/16 NICOP for all of the brake lines. So we're gonna have to bend those up and get those on, which we'll probably do after we get the transmission in, which hopefully we'll have done later today. As far as changes to the frame, nothing too crazy. I know I got the sway bar back in, just threw the front brake lines back in, the Willwood braided lines. Another cool thing that I thought about doing, I didn't actually know someone made it, was switching out this flex line back here that goes from the frame to the top of the rear differential. This is rubber from the factory, which I don't really like. I'm trying to get rid of all of the rubber lines on the car. And Jegs actually has their own brand that you can buy, and perfectly bolted up, lined up, right length and everything. So works out nice, and it was only like, I don't know, probably 30 bucks, something like that, which isn't bad. So now there's not going to be any rubber left on the brake lines, which is good, because I didn't want to have rubber. The only reason this was back here was because I couldn't find one for the longest time. But finally got one. So I need to also, before we put the drive shaft in or back here, change the pinion seal, and then I'm gonna do a new housing cover gasket, and then change the fluid. We've never changed fluid since we put this in the car 2 years ago. It's easy to do it while the whole car is apart. So yeah, then finished gunning the wiring harness out. I think I pulled most of it out. All that's left was the EFI harnesses and stuff. I need to pull the harness out from the inside of the car. So that's fully gutted, because as soon as we get the frame back on the chassis, we're going to be going on to the wiring. And then we're kind of in the home stretch at that point. So slowly getting there, slowly but surely. We finally have a date in mind for an autocross we're trying to make it to. We're going to be shooting for May 15th. There's a local club called CART, Connecticut Autocross and Rally Team, that we usually run the M3 with. They have an event April 25th, but it's at a lot in Hartford that isn't that great of a lot. So we're going to wait, and May 15th, they're doing an event up at the Big E Fairgrounds. So we're going to be aiming for that, which is going to be a lot of work, because we need to get the car back together, put 500 miles on the trans to break it in, 200 miles on the clutch to break it in, you know, go to a lot that we have access to do a private test, shake this down, see if there's any bugs, issues that we need to work out, if anything breaks, you know, anything like leaks or just stupid stuff. So we got a lot of work to do. It's going to be a long, I think it's about a month and 8 days from when I'm filming this to when that event is. So, and I got to order wheels, but no, you know, anything like leaks or just stupid stuff. So we got a lot of work to do. It's going to be a long, I think it's about a month and 8 days from when I'm filming this to when that event is. So, and I got to order wheels, but the lead time on that's only like a week or so, so that's not really that bad. But yeah, slowly but surely making progress. So keep you guys posted, and I'll update you guys once we get the transmission in. All right, so finally got the transmission in. It's all bolted in, fully installed. The only thing we have left to do is to add fluid in, and then put the RTV on the top of the shifter housing here, and then seal that and bolt that back down. But yeah, it's cool to see the engine and trans all back in. I have the core support back on. Originally I was going to sandblast this and paint it and restore it. It's probably going to be a project for next year. I don't want things to snowball, because we are still a few weeks away from autocross season starting. So as much as I'd like to take care of every little thing here, it looks decent enough for now, so I'll just deal with that in the winter of this year. So it's going to run it like this for this season. I have the trans cooler on here. We put that on here in case we were going to do any full track days when we had the TH400 in the car. We ended up not doing any, so it's kind of pointless. May reuse it as an oil cooler. If not, we're just going to throw it on my dad's car when we do that, just so he has a decent oil cooler on there. But yeah, front end's coming back together slowly but surely. Through the radiator hoses on there. Still have to do little things like put the spark plugs back in the engine, need to put coolant in, oil in, set the timing. Got the solid body mounts in here now. Those are the ones I had mentioned in a previous video. We did the final production run, so those are all made and listed up for sale. Sold a few sets already. People seem to like them so far. It's cool to be running a part that, you know, I designed from scratch, and you know, put it through its paces, running events, things like that. So it's cool to see those parts on the car. If you're interested in getting a set for your car, I'll put the link here. I only have them for the 68 to 72A bodies right now, but I'm thinking of making a set for the 64 to 67s. It's essentially the same part, just a few changes. We still need to put the drive shaft in. There's not great clearance right now between the drive shaft and the back of this cross member here, so we're going to wait until the frame's back on the body, because hopefully it'll compress the rear end a little bit and then bring it up and then give us the clearance to that we need. Drive shaft sitting over there. I need to throw out some of the boxes. I have boxes everywhere, but it's getting slowly cleaner by cleaner as the car goes back together. I have all my tilt and engineering stuff in here. Remote reservoir, the brake bias adjuster that'll go in the dash, and then all the master cylinders and the pedal assemblies. That's probably gonna be one of the first projects we're gonna be doing once we get onto the body. But that's really it for this video. The next video, we're probably gonna be taking care of the little things, running the fuel lines, putting the rest of the exhaust in, and hopefully taking care of the last little bit of sheet metal work, and then getting this thing back together. So making good progress. We still got a lot of work to do, but we are making some good headway. It's been what, about 3 months now, 4 months almost, since we've taken the car apart back in December to start all these changes, and you know, it's been good progress since then. So, you know, if you like it, leave a like. If you want to see more, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you get notifications whenever I post, and stay tuned for the next episode.